I'm Warren Barrie from Bulk Infrastructure. I'm a little bit conscious that I've probably got the graveyard shift today, so I'm the guy keeping you back from a beer or a glass of wine at the end of the day, so I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. A little bit about what I'm presenting on today. So it's all about building sustainable digital infrastructure for AI and big data. So Bulk as an organization, we design, build and operate data centers and large-scale fiber optic networks. And so these are really it's the underpinning infrastructure where the workloads for AI and big data sit very comfortably. So with those workloads in mind, our vision is to bring sustainability to the forefront, and that is a key part of what we do. We house our data centers in Nordic locations, and as a result, we leverage the large renewable energy sources that region has to offer. So, Bulk Infrastructure as a business, we are made up of three different business lines. We've got an industrial real estate business, a data center business, and a fiber networks business, and we knit all three of these business lines together to build sustainable infrastructure for AI and big data applications. The four key pillars of our business is built around sustainability. So all of our assets are built in a highly sustainable way. They're all infrastructure based, so we own and operate all of these assets. They're all majorly scalable. So we tend to go into campuses that we can build for the long term, and they are all Nordics based. And just touching on the point I made previously, the reason they're Nordics based is because we've got a large pool of renewable energy that we can leverage in those regions. Okay, so coming on to our portfolio of data centers, that's the part of the business that I'm involved in. We have three campuses, two of which are in Norway, one of which is in Denmark. Our Oslo Internet Exchange facility, that's a carrier-rich facility based in a metro location in Oslo. Our N01 campus is on the southern tip of Norway in an area called Kristiansand. This is perfectly primed for AI and big data applications. And our DK01 campus is a strategic campus. A lot of subsea cables terminate into this region on the western flank of Denmark in an area called Esbjerg, and we fan out from there into the DAC regions and into continental Europe, the UK, and the rest of the world. So I mentioned we build fiber optic networks as well. So not only do we build highly sustainable data centers, but we need to connect those data centers. So we are involved in more than 10,000 kilometers of subsea and terrestrial fiber networks, where we connect all of our data centers together, but we also connect them into the key markets around the world. So there's no point in having a big data center if you can't connect that to anywhere else in the world. So you can see there's an orange subsea cable that's just recently gone in, goes over the top of Ireland, and then spurs off into Ireland. That we've done in partnership with Google, Facebook, and Aquacoms, and that's the first transatlantic cable that we've put in between Norway and Denmark and New Jersey on the east coast of the US in the last 20 years. So it's about an 8,500 fiber optic cable that we put in, and that's high capacity. So that opens up a lot of the transit and transport routes coming into the Nordic region as well. Okay. Not surprised to see that we comply with the UN sustainability goals. This pretty much is at the forefront of how we structure our business. So not only do we measure and monitor all of the CO2 outputs that we have across all of our business lines, but we look to make improvements on that as well. So by placing data sets in the Nordic region, we can help organizations leverage the renewable sources and thereby help them decrease their CO2 emissions. Okay, so this is an interesting slide. This is of a natural language processing application on the AI side of things. And what it is communicating is the CO2 emissions that are generally prevalent with an NLP type application. So if you have a look at the graph on the right hand side, you'll see that the training on an AI model for NLP application is much higher than traditional CO2 emitters like the airline industry, or even life at home, or even the fuel that we burn going into cars. So it's just to point out that AI and big data are large emitters of CO2 emissions. And so what needs to happen is companies need to be very structured about where they put their data. They need to understand their data explicitly, and they need to relocate data that is not latency sensitive into regions that are of a very, very sustainable nature. And the Nordics, as an example, is a very sustainable location. Okay, so we're in 2021 now, at the end of. I think they touched on this in the panel before, but electricity consumption is obviously on the rise, so are greenhouse gas emissions on the rise as well. And the picture, if you forward through to 2030, looks quite disturbing. So data centers form a key part of that. 13% of the globe's electricity consumption will be housed in data centers, and 6% of the greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 will come out of data centers. So it's hard to get around being able to reduce your CO2 emissions if you put your data into traditional markets, like some of the European markets, because predominantly they're run on fossil fuels. So this picture really paints the fact that there is a desperate need to get your data sets into regions that are far more sustainable. Okay. Interesting case here, and this is really on 1 megawatts worth of IT load, measured over a year. And it compares two markets. So it compares London against Oslo, for example. So the UK against Norway. And what it's saying is that in the UK for a 1 megawatt load versus in Norway for a 1 megawatt load, you can house about 10 times the amount of, more than 10 times the amount of compute in Norway, giving off the same CO2 emissions as you can in the UK. So that's quite a scary picture, but it means that your CO2 emissions are greatly reduced by just putting your workload sensibly into a region that is highly sustainable. And then not only is sustainability isn't only about the environmental impact. Sustainability is multifaceted, and it should be about the commercial impact as well, or the economical impact. So how are you being sustainable? By looking at the commerce side of things. Because the Nordic region produces a surplus of energy, a surplus of renewable energy, it's highly incentivized to attract energy-intensive industries into the region. And so the taxes and the levies that are applied to the production of energy are much lower in these regions than they would be in your traditional markets in Europe, which means that the cost of energy is far lower. So if we take the same workload we spoke about before, which was a megawatt, and we apply a factor of 10 to that, and we use some forward predicted pricing on the energy markets, we can see that for a 10 megawatt loads worth of energy, over a 10-year term, you're saving roughly 225 million euros just purely on your energy costs. So that is being highly sustainable about the economic aspects of where you put your AI and big data workloads as well. That money can obviously be reinvested in other projects or in future projects, in hardware refreshes, etc. Okay. So just talking about the third pillar really of sustainability, and that is power and access to power at scale. So the image on the left shows Norway, and we're in the southern tip of Norway, which is the NO2 region of Norway, and that's really called the electricity region that produces the large pools of hydro energy, and 100% hydro energy in this region as well. And if you come to the image on the right-hand side over here, you'll see the letter B, which stands for bulk. That's where we house our data center. That sits next to Europe's largest, or adjacent to Europe's largest renewable transformer station. That's a 3.6 gigawatt transformer station. So to put that into context, that can power the whole of Ireland year on year into infinity. We take about a gigawatt's worth of power from that particular facility, so we've got energy at our campus that will last almost infinitely. And then the fourth pillar of sustainability is space, is connected to space. And so we've got a 3 square kilometre campus here, which is divided into 10 different zones. We're currently developing zones 1 and 2, and which sits next to the Kristiansand Transformer Station, that 3.6 gigawatt transformer station. And we can develop all sorts of solutions here to meet the workload profile that customers require. So AI and big data can be of a redundant nature, it can be of a non-redundant nature, and because we have the space and we have loads of power, we can build solutions to meet customer requirements. And so putting this all into context, just a quick case study of a UK headquartered hedge fund. So we transacted this deal during COVID. Customer wasn't able to travel, not able to see the data center. 2 of the key requirements for them was to reduce their sustainability in line with their ESG principles. And the second key requirement was to massively reduce their cost. So I spoke about a megawatts worth of IT load previously. This is exactly a megawatt's worth of IT load. The customer ran a RFP across the Nordic region, and they landed on bulk in Norway for the reasons I've mentioned before. To give you an idea of the type of deployment that they put in place, so we're talking about a significant GPU profile there, so 1,500 GPUs. I think this particular deployment is classed as one of the top 50 supercomputers across the globe. So 10,000 CPU cores, a whole lot of storage, and rack densities that will run very, very, very highly. Put this into context, their CO2 emissions, so they've now run carbon neutral because they're running in the Norwegian region, which is a big tick in the box for their ESG profile. And they are saving roughly over a 10-year term about 20 to 25 million euros in energy costs, which has pretty much funded the whole hardware deployment. So this was all done through COVID. We helped this particular customer land in Norway. It's the first time they've landed in the Nordic region. No operational entity set up in Norway. And through our concierge type service, we're able to procure, ship, do all the logistics, clear customs, negate all of the customs tax upon arrival, and then rack and stack the infrastructure and provide ongoing support on a 24/7 basis to this particular customer. And that was all done during COVID. Customer didn't see the data center at all. And that's me. So that was short and sweet. I'm open to any questions if anyone's got any questions. Otherwise, I'll let you guys go and get a drink.
Hi, my name is Ludwig, and thank you for the presentation. I was wondering about the benchmark that you did with London. Do you have any other cities as well that you compared it with? Because the land price is probably a bit different too.
Yeah, we do. It's a great question. We used London because it's one of the largest metros in Europe, but we certainly have for the FLAP-D markets, so Frankfurt, London, Amsterdam, Paris, Dublin. Can extend that into the likes of Madrid as well. I think you find the picture, London provides an average picture. If you compare a market like Frankfurt, the picture actually gets worse and suits the Nordic region even better. When you bring it down to the data sets and you break down the numbers, the argument, the business case for moving to the Nordics is quite significant.